Hey everyone, Jen here today, and we have a new video for you. I hope you have enjoyed Colin's video contributions. If you haven't already seen her two videos that she's done, please go check those out and comment on them. She's done a great job with the videos, and I look forward to seeing more of her videos. So today we're making the new pumpkin quilt block. So you can see here my sample, I made a runner with this quilt block. So we're just going to do the single file as normal. This quilt block is actually, it's made in one hooping, but it is two components. So you have the stem and you have the pumpkin base. So you will have to connect the stem to the pumpkin base on your sewing machine when you are putting your blocks into whatever project that you are going to be making. And I'll go over how to line those up and sew them together in our video. So for this here, this is the 8x8 block, which is the true 8x8 block, which is in a 9x14 hoop. There is a 7.87 version, which fits in an 8x12 hoop. So for those of you who don't know, brother hoops, the 8x12 or the 8x8 is a width of 7.87. So that's why we include a true 8x8, which has to go in a 9-inch frame, or the 7.87, which will fit in an 8-inch frame. So just for reference. So I went ahead and cut down all of my fabrics to the cut chart. This sample does have sashing, so the block is actually just the center block here. So I'm going to go ahead and load up the Tear Easy, which is what we use for all of our in the hoop quilt blocks. That's also in the PDF, just in case you forget. And actually, I have a picture of it. So we have Tear Easy here, and it is color coded green. So all the sulky not interfacing, stabilizers are color coded. So Tear Easy is green. So go ahead and load up Tear Easy in your hoop and let's get started. All right, so I have my stabilizer hooped, and I went ahead and ran step one, which is the placement stitch for the stem portion of the block. I would just want to show you the fabrics. So for the top stem portion, you have a stem, you have the background fabric for the top of the triangle, and then the two sides. And then for the pumpkin base, you have four pieces of orange fabric or whatever you're going to use. This is going to be the hardest part of the block, is choosing your four fabrics. True story. You can come back and tell me in the comments that that was the hardest part. And then for the corners, you're going to want more background fabric. You're going to take two squares, cut them on the diagonal, so you have four triangles for each of the corners. Okay, so there's all my fabrics. I pre-starch all my fabrics for these blocks. So that's all taken care of. All right, so here is and I did run this on double black, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to see. So the first step is going to run the placement for the stem. So the first fabric to go down is going to be the green or whatever color you choose for the pumpkin stem. And what I like to do is start off with a 1/4 inch seam allowance roughly at the bottom. So it's up to you. You'll have to trim. It doesn't matter if you don't care about trimming, then, go for it. This is cut to the cut chart. So you can see we leave a good amount of seam allowance for you guys. So I will line up my stem, and I'm going to go ahead and run step 2 to tack my stem into place. Okay, so our stem is tacked into place, and now I'm going to go ahead and trim off the top portion where the background fabric is going to go. And then you can also trim down to about 1/4 inch on either side. And I'm just going to leave the bottom because I'll just trim that after once the block's all finished. So the next step is going to be the triangle. Now, you can take this square. In the cut chart, it's a square just because it's easier to measure a square. You can cut this also on the diagonal for the top and save the other one for another block. Or you can just use a square or a scrap. It doesn't really matter. So you're going to take your triangle background fabric. You're going to place it right side down with the excess towards the interior of the block, just like this. This next step's going to tack it into place along the edge, and then we're going to flip it over and finish the tack down. So, okay, So our triangle is tacked into place. I marked it with a black marker so you could see it. You're going to take your triangle and you're going to flip it over just like this. And the next step is going to tack it into place around the outside. So I will say this is to cut chart. I like a bigger piece for these little bitty corners. So if you have a hard time holding the fabric into place or you don't want to tape it, you can always just use a bigger piece of fabric, excuse me, and do it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and tack that into place. We'll be right back. Okay, so the background's tacked down. I'm going to go ahead and trim off this little piece of fabric here. Okay, the sides are attached the same way for both. So you have two pieces of side fabric. The right side is going to go first. So you're going to take your right side background fabric, place the fabric right side down, and line it up with the edge of your stem fabric so you do not have to trim after. So the next step is going to tack vertically down the side here, and then we're going to follow the same process, flip it over and go around the outside. Okay, so it's tacked into place here. We're going to take your side and flip it over, just finger press it, and you can tape that into place or just hold it. The next step is going to go around the outer edges and tack your side into place. Okay, so our left side is tacked into place. So the stem portion is now complete. I went ahead and ran the placement stitch for the pumpkin base while I was there just to save us some time. So again, the hardest part of this is going to be picking the 4 fabrics. So just for me personally, I had a lot of oranges from other Halloween projects, and I made, I think, 3 pumpkins for my runner, and I was driving myself crazy, to be honest, trying to pick the orange fabric. So I had to get over the fact that the pumpkin is supposed to kind of have a scrappy look, and if you're mixing oranges, it really doesn't matter. So my theory was to stick with the same color base and not worry about the patterns, just kind of the oranges at least go together. So I don't have a bright, bright light orange with a very, very dark orange. So they're all of similar shade or close in shade. And then the patterns really don't matter. I think that's what makes the block really fun, is mixing patterns and stuff. So these are my 4 choices, and I just randomly put them in any order just to not stress myself out. So the first strip that's going to go down is the left strip, and this strip is going to lay flat. So you want to go ahead and start that strip. Leave yourself a 1/4 inch or so seam allowance on the interior. Don't worry about the outside. You do want to have a good seam allowance on the outside so you can trim your block down later. So the next step is going to tack this fabric down into place on your stabilizer. Okay, so the right side is fully tacked into place. We're going to go ahead and repeat the process on the left side. So side fabric, right side down. You're going to stitch vertically, then flip it and complete the stitch around the outside. Okay, so fabric 1 is in place, and you can see that it also created the placement lines for your first 2 corners. So the next fabric that's going to go down is number 2 here. So you're going to take your next orange fabric and place it right side down and go ahead and line up the seams so you don't have to trim those. It's going to run the vertical line to tack that into place. And then we're going to use the same method as up top, flip it over and complete the tack down. Okay, so our vertical line here is ran. You're going to go ahead and take your fabric, fold it over, finger press it, just like that. You can tape it or hold it in the hoop, whatever you prefer. And then the next step is going to tack it into place around the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and run that and be right back. Strip 2 is in place. So you can see we give plenty of wiggle room here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this down to roughly a 1/4 inch there. And again, if you've watched any of my videos, these kid scissors are the best for these blocks. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish and do the next 2 strips, which are attached the exact same way. So fabric right side down, line it up with your edge of your previous fabric, run your vertical line, fold it over, and finish the tack down. And you'll do that for 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so our 4 strips are all complete, and you can see the final strip here did the same placement lines for your corners as strip 1. So we're going to go ahead and trim off these corners to, again, roughly a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You do not need to trim anywhere else. You want to leave the seam allowance for later. Go ahead and take these off. And all 4 corners are going to be attached the same way. So it's the stitch and flip method that we've been using all along. So you're going to start with the left top and then work your way around the pumpkin. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to show you how to do one, and then I'm going to wrap up the other one. So you're going to take your background fabric, right side down, place it here. You're going to go ahead and do your diagonal stitch here, and then you're going to flip your fabric over and complete the outline stitching. Okay, so you can see here our first corner is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and do corner 2, 3, and 4. And then that will be the construction of this block. And then we'll remove it and we'll talk about how to trim it and putting it together. Okay, so our block is now complete. And if you have watched any of the other quilt block videos, I talk about leaving the stabilizer in. It helps with construction, and that is similar to traditional foundation paper piecing. For this block, I will tell you, I found it easier to remove the stabilizer from the stem to connect it to the bottom. And you don't have to if you are a very seasoned sewer or quilter. I just found it easier to make sure the lines matched up with taking the stabilizer out of the stem. So for the video, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you the what I call the traditional way to line these pieces up, because if you were to do the other blocks or piecing blocks or do traditional foundation paper piece, you'll have the little tricks that I'm going to show you for that. So here is the base and then the stem, again, leaving the interior stabilizer, just pull it out from the outside here, and then we'll remove all of that once. Typically I'll remove it at the end of the project. So once you put all of your blocks together, you would remove it. So we're going to go ahead and trim these. Now, the seam allowance is not sewn into our quilt blocks, or most of them. So for this one, you're going to have to trim in your seam allowance, which you're going to want 1/4 inch. Okay, so the good news is I did this with black thread, so it's a lot easier to see. So you're going to take your ruler, which I use the Creative Grids ruler. Again, it has like the frosted highlight of the 1/4 inch on these rulers. Make sure you're using the 1/4 inch side, not the 1/2 inch side. Okay, you're going to line up your ruler, the dashed 1/4 inch line, right on top of your stitch line, and go ahead and trim. And that's going to give you 1/4 inch. So you're going to do that all the way around both pieces of your block. Now, that one I shifted a little, so my fault. Now, when I put these together, I like to use my 1/4 inch foot with guide. I also like to shift my needle 1 click to the left, and then it will sew right just on the left side of the tack down stitching. So I ensure that all of that stitching is enclosed in the seam. If you were doing traditional paper piecing, you wouldn't have the stitching along the outside of your block, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. But because we're doing this in the hoop and we have an embroidery foot to worry about, we have to tack them, or I prefer to tack them all down. It just causes less issues. Okay, so here's the stem, and here is our pumpkin base. So now what we're going to do is we want to connect these two. So the way I do it for traditional paper piecing and how I did my blocks here is you're going to take your stem, fold it over so it's right sides together, and you're going to take your pin. Let's see here. You're going to put your pin in the corner of the stitching here, just like that. And then you're going to take that pin and go through the corner of the pumpkin. Now you want your pin to sit straight up and down. If it's pulling, that means it's not lined up. So straight up and down, and then I go ahead and I pin the two pieces together. Remove that, and then go ahead and repeat the process on this side, although it should be lined up because it's not traditional paper piecing and made in the hoop. It's exactly the correct size. What I find has happened when I was sewing them together is I had some shifting. So again, here's my straight up and down pin. And if you want to pin it one more time, that's fine. I find if you overpin, that could be a problem and it can pull things out of an alignment. So you're going to go ahead and sew across the top using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you sew these together, just using this method, and when you flip it, I'm going to pretend we did this. If you flip it and you find that your exterior lines here do not match these lines just slightly, that is where I decided to remove the stabilizer. So this piece you can see is the exact width. So I removed the stabilizer to make the fabric a little more flexible. And then I pinned the outer edges and sewed across and had no problem. The main thing you want to pay attention to is where these lines are. If they are shifted towards the interior, you're going to have that show up on your block. So if you have one side straight, say these two lines are perfectly connected, and this one is over to the right just slightly, that doesn't matter because it's going to get cut off or it's going to be in your seam allowance. So just a tip for that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go attach the two pieces together, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I sewed the top, the stem to the pumpkin base. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. So you can see here is our finished, and you can see where my lines fell, and that was using the method with the pins. Now, if you're going to put this, I am going to press this, but if you are going to put multiple blocks together, I would not remove any of the stabilizer, just like I've said in all the previous blocks. The stabilizer helps keep your fabric shape, your block shape, and it does make it easier to piece them all together. If you are just going to put this into, say, a bag or another project where you're not piecing blocks, then you could easily just remove the stabilizer if you wanted to. I'm going to leave the stabilizer because I am going to use this for another project, but I am going to go ahead and press this like this. And then when I come back, I'll show you the runner. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so my block is complete. Again, this is the 5-inch block and this is the 8-inch block. So for this specific runner, I wanted it to be a 10-inch runner. So I added some sashing and a border to the block. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3 pumpkin blocks, and the block is here. This is the block. So what I did was, and I will put these measurements down below so you'll have them. I used 2.5-inch strips, so like a jelly roll size strip. I added 1 in between each pumpkin and on the ends. So 1, 2, 3, 4 strips, sashing strips, and connected all of the pumpkins together. And then I used a same width, so another 2.5-inch strip along the top and the bottom of the pumpkins. And that yielded me, once you put your binding on, a 10-inch pumpkin. let me just make sure that I am not wrong. Oh, maybe I did 12 inches. Yeah. So 8, 9, 10, 11 times, excuse me, 12-inch pumpkin. That's what fits on my weird windowsill. So roughly 2 inches on the top, 2 inches on the bottom, 8-inch square. You get your 12-inch runner. So for if you only have a 5x7 hoop, you can still make this, especially if you only want 12 inches and you don't want to add a bunch of sashing. That's fine too. You can take 4 of these pumpkins, or you could do 2 pumpkins and 2 solids to make 1 block. And then if you want it wider, you can add sashing or borders to it, however you want. So that's a good idea. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you could do different prints. You could do sashing in between 2, what have you. So I will put those measurements below. This is the back. You can see this quilting. This quilting I will link below is a pantograph. It's a quilt, long arm pantograph. So if you have software, you can convert this to use on your embroidery machine. I like her name's My Creative Stitches. I don't know her personally, but I have several of her designs and I love them and I've used them on my actual big quilts. So the other project I want to show you using this block is Halloween version. Now, this is one where I did go ahead and I removed all of the stabilizers. So you can see this is how it looks once the stabilizer is removed. So I added again, another 2.5-inch strip at the top and the bottom of the pumpkin, because I am going to make this into like I don't know what to call it, but it's going to be like a table cover. So this is the 10-inch pumpkin. And I added, again, jelly roll with strip on the top and the bottom to make this, I think it's 14 inches. I have this little table that I want to cover it's a bigger than a placemat that Watson steps on to get into the window ledge, and he's scraping up my table. So it's an odd size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take I have leftover jelly roll strips from the scrappy half square triangle quilt block and quilt pattern, if you saw those. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add strips to the sides. So we have, let's see, yep, skeletons. We have bats, geos, and some vampire teeth, which I think are hysterical. They remind me of like those gummy ones, the candy ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to piece these together. And this also was a project that I did in the summer. Grab it. I used the same method for this placemat. So this is a log cabin hot pad. This is the 11-inch, the biggest one. And then I sewed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips. I think these are 2-inch or 1 and maybe 1 3/4 strips to make an actual placemat. So the same concept is going to be used here. It's just the pumpkins in the middle. And then I'm going to do 2 strips on each side, and then I will quilt it. And I haven't decided how I'm going to do the back yet because it is a little table. I kind of want to do ties and things. But anyway, you can make this pumpkin into a Halloween version, a fall version, funky color version. It's really fun and I hope you enjoy it. And I can't wait to see your projects. Please be sure to like and subscribe and comment. That helps engagement and other people's to see our videos. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.